Tonight, the escalating fury over the fight to build more housing on Greenbelt lands.
Even in conservative parts of the province, there are people who are very, very upset about this.
Why political foes are piling on after the AG finds bias in the controversial land deal, and what the Premier is saying amid intensifying calls to fire his housing minister.
If you could just tap and hop on and go, and that makes it easier.
Plus, easing your commute, what payment changes are in store for your next trip on the TTC.
We all, think of ourselves as part of a family.
We want Peter to know how special he is to us.
And paying tribute to a longtime benchmate, the local announcer, whose team is excited to call him to the plate tonight. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. We begin again tonight talking about that controversial land swap deal of the Greenbelt. The Ford government is itself tonight asking the Integrity Commissioner to look into whether one of its political staffers broke ethics rules. It all comes amid the Auditor General's report yesterday that found a select few developers seriously benefited from the arrangement. And today, Doug Ford faced more pressure to fire his housing minister. Ali Chiasson begins our coverage tonight.
The process was biased in favor of certain developers and landowners who had timely access to the housing minister's chief of staff.
After that scathing rebuke of the province's Greenbelt land swap, the Premier's office has asked the Integrity Commissioner to look into whether said staffer broke any ethics rules in his alleged dealings with developers. The report pointed out that most of the land removed from the Greenbelt was specially requested by these companies. Quote, about 92% of the acreage ultimately removed from the Greenbelt was 5 land sites passed on to the housing minister's chief of staff from 2 developers. Thousands of acres that would be worth about $8.3 billion. Yesterday, both Premier Ford and Housing Minister Steve Clark denied they colluded with developers. When asked about his chief of staff.
So just to be clear, this chief of staff is keeping his job?
I appreciate the support that the Premier has given to me and my team.
The minister was not clear.
I was pretty shocked yesterday when there seemed to be absolutely no accountability for what has been done.
Thank you so much.
Ford said he would do everything the Auditor General recommended, except give the land back to the Greenbelt. The Premier before him, Kathleen Wynne, says Ford can expect a lot of blowback.
Even in conservative parts of the province, there are people who are very, very upset about this. They need to speak up and let backbenchers and ministers know that this is not okay and that the decision needs to be revisited. I think that's the most important thing that can happen right now.
The Auditor General report also says, quote, the Chief of Staff of the Housing Ministry was given the responsibility by the Premier's office to direct a project to change the Greenbelt's boundary, which makes this former Greenbelt council member think making one person the fall guy wouldn't be right.
A senior staff member in a political environment is directly responsible to the minister that he's serving.
As for the government saying they needed the Greenbelt land to increase housing supply.
At the amount of land that they propose there is your typical suburban density, somewhere around 17 units per hectare. And that just, typical suburbia is not going to solve our problem.
CBC Toronto reached out to Minister Clark's Chief of Staff, Ryan Amato, in light of the inquiry being requested by his boss. We received an out-of-town auto reply. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
It was a big day in city politics today as well. Mayor Olivia Chow revealing which councillors will play key roles in her administration. And no surprise, her progressive allies will feature prominently. Dale Manukduk brings us that story tonight.
The mayor has appointed Madam Chair yourself as the first deputy mayor.
The city clerk looking to Spadina Fort York councillor Asma Malik, who last October made history as the first hijab-wearing Muslim woman elected to public office in Canada. Malik's ties to Mayor Olivia Chow go back more than a decade to when she was a student activist at the University of Toronto.
I've been so excited to be able to learn from her along the way and now to work alongside each other as colleagues. That's a Toronto story.
Malik replaces Jennifer McKelvey as first deputy mayor. However, McKelvey will remain on as one of 3 other deputy mayors that represent every corner of the city.
Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey
She did an excellent job as an acting mayor. She has the depth of experience and a steady hand.
Malik isn't the only rookie councillor to nail down a key appointment. Tapped as chair of the TTC is Scarborough North's Jamal Myers, who doesn't own a car and takes transit to work.
You know, I started working when I started as a community organizer. I started as a transit organizer in Scarborough back in 2018. So I've really come full circle.
Some other changes. Councillor Shelley Carroll is out as chair of Economic and Community Development, replaced by Alejandra Bravo. Carroll now has the big responsibility of chairing the Budget Committee as the city tries to figure a way through a $1.5 billion shortfall. And on the housing front, Beaches East York's Brad Bradford, who ran against Chow and criticized much of her housing plan, will now serve as vice chair to Gord Perks.
The City of Toronto needs strong partnerships with the federal and provincial government to deliver housing, but also to balance our books so we're in a position to deliver that housing. And it's going to be a challenge, but Mayor Chow is certainly up to it.
The appointments are a big change going forward, but the mayor and councillors say that collaboration is necessary.
One of Olivia Chow's strengths in her past political career was she works well in the sandbox. She can collaborate with other political figures.
There were a lot of other appointments made today, and one of the ones we were keeping our eye on was the Toronto Police Board. Reporters did have a chance to ask Mayor Chow why she didn't appoint herself. We know that community safety was one of the things that she ran on. We also know that there's tension between the mayor and the police union, who say that there's a lack of public support from the mayor. The mayor says that the police file is really big, and she'll be putting most of her energy into the housing file. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Transit in the city has been top of mind for the new mayor as well. And tonight, a significant update for you. After more than a decade of promises, we are now very close to passengers being able to tap their debit or credit cards instead of a Presto card. Greg Ross has all those details.
Credit card, debit card, Apple Pay, and Google Pay will all be acceptable forms of payment to ride the TTC.
Having this ability just makes it that much more seamless for people to take public transit.
At a press conference today, TTC CEO Rick Leary said making it easier to use public transit is key at a time when the TTC is still recovering from the pandemic.
While the average weekday boardings stand at roughly 78% of pre-COVID levels.
Being able to tap a credit or debit card also makes it easier for less frequent users of Toronto Transit.
Ridership among less frequent customers, and that's those that ride the TTC 4 times a week or less, stands at 118% of pre-COVID levels.
This woman and her daughter were visiting from Owen Sound today.
If you could just tap and hop on and go, and that makes it easier.
The service doesn't officially launch until Tuesday, but already at many subway stations around the city, debit and credit capability was up and running.
Unbeknownst to this man, who used his credit card to reload his Presto card.
Yeah, I have replaced my Presto probably 3 times already, so yeah, if I use my credit or debit card, I mean, that's amazing.
While this is new in Toronto, it's been an option in many other major centers around the world for years. In fact, many other cities around the GTA already offer this method of payment, which has many wondering why it took so long here.
The TTC had this planned over 13 years ago, but was forced by the province to accept Presto.
Cameron McLeod with Code Red TO says the agreement with the city and Presto always included a debit and credit option, but he says they just took too long to make it happen.
When the TTC had it planned 13 years ago, it would have been an exciting new thing for our region, but today it's just table stakes. It's just considered a bare minimum.
The next step is to integrate the TTC's payment systems with other transit around the province.
We're working closely with our partners, including the TTC, to develop coordinated approaches to regional fare integration that benefits riders.
They say that is still months away. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, 21 degrees and just a few clouds out there as we look live at the city tonight. Colette is here now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, what a wild ride today was with the weather.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. You know, we've been seeing this kind of pattern almost every other day, good weather and then bad and good. But today, within the course of a day, we had things just changing from this morning, at least in the city, some nice conditions. And then, of course, as the cold front was approaching, we get into the line of storms, and then behind it, a nice evening. So obviously some very active weather and stronger cells there at times. Daytime highs today, they were really impacted because we tended to see the warm up, then the temperatures dipped in the afternoon depending on the situation with the wet weather and where you're located, and then they rose again behind it as the sun came back out and things were quieter. So speaking of quiet or pleasant conditions, we have those to start the day off on Friday, a nice ridge of high pressure. And I'll tell you, southwestern Ontario, most of the day is going to be pretty good into the afternoon hours. It's later afternoon, evening. That's when I'd be kind of being aware that more showers are going to push back in. And that's kind of just the beginning of what's moving in Friday night into Saturday for the lower Great Lakes region. I'll have more details on that coming up. But tonight it's 15, and tomorrow for Toronto, a very lovely 26 degrees with mostly sunny skies. Chris.
What a beauty. All right. Thanks, Colette. Taking you now to East York, and I think you're going to like this next one. A baseball team celebrated a milestone retirement tonight. Longtime volunteer Peter Crips is saying goodbye as an announcer with the East Toronto Women's Fast Pitch Association. Anam Khan joins us live from the pitch. And Anam, the 94-year-old is retiring as an announcer after an incredible 35 years.
Right. So, Chris, I'm at Dieppe Park right now, and the baseball game just wrapped up from the Women's League. And it was really heartwarming, you know. A lot of the players, they came together, they shared some memories, they ate cake, and they took some photos. And like, when I spoke to these players, a lot of them would start crying when they would speak about how important Crips was to them. So I could tell it was very important, this event. On a sunny evening at Dieppe Park, women from the local baseball league gathered for a special celebration. Happy birthday to you. Peter Crips is a true legend in the East York community. He's been the official announcer for the East Toronto Women's Fast Pitch Association for more than 3 decades, volunteering his time, energy, and unwavering support. Rain or shine, he's barely missed a day. Today, players are celebrating his retirement and his 94th birthday.
He did everything for us. He'd come out early, unlock the booth, get the bases ready, get the chalk out, get our gear ready, come to the diamond midday, check out the diamond, and give us a diamond report from the payphone. He has always taken care of us. He even used to rake up the mud when we used to have big rain puddles out there.
Crips has been announcing twice a week. He pulls out his scorecard and announces the players' names. He took the mic one last time today.
Allison, number 12 is up to bat.
Crips still remembers when they came to him asking him to be their announcer.
I used to watch him. They said, here, be the announcer, so I did.
But what made you stay?
Well, just like that. I had nothing else to do. See all the nice young ladies.
Crips also served as the league's president and sponsored a team in the 90s that won the title. He cherishes every win, and the players cherish him.
To come to a league that's been around that long, active that long, people are involved with it for that long, and it's not transitional. So we all, think of ourselves as part of a family.
The bond between Crips and the players has only grown stronger over countless innings and seasons.
We want Peter to know how special he is to us, how much he has done for us, and that we recognize it. Every year is just a gift with Peter.
Sorry, the lights just turned off. So while Peter may be retiring, he's not going away anytime soon. He plans on spending times with the players. He lives right across the street, and for him, the most cherished moments are made off the pitch.
All right, Anna. Well, the lights may have turned off, but you can see how much those players just love that man. Thank you so much for bringing us that story. Loved it. Welcome back. A decades-old trial from Etobicoke is in the spotlight tonight. Timothy Reese was convicted in the 1989 murder of a 10-year-old girl and spent a quarter of a century locked up. Tonight, the federal government says a miscarriage of justice likely took place. Talia Ricci explains why the case is now being reviewed.
He came to Innocence Canada, and we agreed to investigate his case and his claim of wrongful conviction. In our work, we discovered that there was a significant amount of evidence that had never been disclosed at his trial, which, had it been disclosed, would likely have changed the verdict.
Tell me about some of the new evidence that was uncovered and what that meant for the case.
Well, the most significant piece of evidence was a tape recording of an interview with the landlord who lived and slept in the room directly opposite that of Darla. An interview given within 12 hours of her homicide that was tape recorded by a police officer. And that tape recording was never disclosed. And it contains a very disturbing interview with the landlord. That includes some disturbing aspects of his relationship with Darla, as he then described it, and also disclosed that he had encountered her twice in the night of her death. The importance of all of that is that his testimony at the trial, because he was called as a Crown witness at the trial, was completely different. He denied having any relationship with Darla, and denied any contact with her in the night of her death. Indeed, he claimed that he went to bed and slept right through the night. Well, that's not what he told the police in this recorded interview. And it's really, to me, quite shocking that that interview was not disclosed to the defense. Clearly, it could have made all the difference, because the interview strongly suggested that the landlord was responsible for Darla's death.
Tell me a little bit about Tim's life now, what that looks like.
Well, it's 34 years since he was charged and convicted, and that, of course, has been a very, very long time for him. He now works. He works in construction in Ontario. He's living as good a life as he can, but of course, having this kind of burden on you, the murder of a 10-year-old girl, is something that I don't think any of us can really imagine.
All right, that was our Talia Ricci reporting. Meantime, a man who was the victim of a random assault at Bloor subway station last month has died of his injuries in hospital. He's been identified as 69-year-old Mangstib Aria. Police say he was pushed to the ground by another man on the evening of July 7th. And the suspect, 40-year-old Lovingston Williams, was arrested and initially charged with aggravated assault. Those charges have now been upgraded to manslaughter. And to Hamilton now, where a Toronto doctor is among those facing charges after a joint police investigation cracking down on fentanyl manufacturing and distribution.
The investigation uncovered 3 super clandestine fentanyl laboratories and 2 storage facilities containing chemicals, laboratory equipment, chemical waste associated to the fentanyl synthesis, and evidence of drug trafficking.
So in November 2022, Hamilton police got a 911 call for reports of an overdose death at a local home. Officers then discovered a drug lab being used for fentanyl production and launched a larger investigation involving officers from Toronto and York. In all, police believe they seized about $4 million worth of illicit drugs. 12 people are now facing dozens of charges, including 31-year-old Toronto doctor Cindy Lai. Let's get back to Colette now. And Colette, you're really dealing with a lot in the weather department today, my friend.
Yeah, it has been a rather confusing kind of pattern that we've been seeing. I mean, just in the sense that it's hard to prepare for at times because things change so much, not just day to day, but even sometimes minute to minute. Well, Friday, I do have some what I'll call rock star weather for us. And that means whether you plan to book a tea time or it's the tennis or anything you might want to do, go for a run, take the dog to the, off-leash park, the beach, anything. Just beautiful conditions. In southwestern Ontario, there will be a principal change in the day, but it's still late in the day, so much of the day Still going to qualify it as rock star. The severe weather risk, though, that does roll in as we get into Saturday. I want you to be paying attention, because even if we get some breaks and the sun comes out and you think everything's improving, that's usually the time when we see those storms kind of bubbling up, as we'll have yet another system working its way through. And then we'll do that flip-flop we've been doing, so that Sunday is going to be dry and sunny and nice conditions behind that system. So through the overnight and tomorrow morning, everyone looking good, including some of the areas, especially eastern Ontario, Niagara region, where we had some of that active weather. And then into the afternoon, this is 2 p.m. Now, earlier in the show, I was showing you a model, the Canadian model, and that's starting to bring things into southwestern Ontario a bit earlier. Here, we're looking at this blend that's even holding it off till later in the evening. So, again, just be kind of preparing later in the day, Windsor, that things will be changing, but the beginning looks great. It's not till overnight and then into Saturday morning. The showers and cloud cover, not just through the GTA, but stretching into eastern Ontario. And then we get some sunny breaks, quite likely behind kind of the warm front. The cold front's got to move in, and that's what can bring us some of those thunderstorms later in the day. And some of those Saturday could be on the stronger side. And then behind it, yes, Sunday looks good again. Overnight temperatures a little cooler tonight, 15 Toronto. I'm not sure if you'll get quite to that 14 in Windsor, but close to it. And Ottawa as well, same temperature there. Tomorrow, though, Toronto 26, feeling like 29, so just a bit of humidity. Saturday, more humidity. You'll notice it does become muggier, but comfortable again into Sunday. And then we'll do it all over again with these ups and downs and every other day flip-flops. Chris?
Yikes. All right. Thanks, Colette. Okay, finally tonight, you'll probably remember that story from last month. A $70 million lottery ticket has officially been declared unclaimed. This is Canada's largest unclaimed lottery ticket ever, and Ontario's Lottery and Gaming Corporation says the ticket winner was never found. The big ticket was bought in Scarborough on June 28th, 2022, and expired after hitting its one-year mark. The $70 million now goes back into the prize pool for future bonus games or promotions. Somebody is kicking themselves tonight, I am sure. And that is our show for you. Thanks for watching. Farmerelli will be with you tomorrow at 11. Have a great night, everyone.